If you're building a no-code app powered by AI, then you probably heard of OpenAI, but have you heard of Cohere? Cohere, in many ways, are setting themselves up to be a competitor of OpenAI, and they actually have a few unique tools, and one of them is Rerank. And Rerank is the ability to provide a number of documents, in this case strings of text, and then to basically order them in relevancy to a user's query. So this is very similar to what you can achieve on a much bigger scale if you are setting up like a RAG database, whether you're using like Pinecode or Xano. In fact, I've just recorded a video covering the different services that I would be considering if you needed to build in a full RAG infrastructure. But what if you don't need a full RAG infrastructure? What if you just need to say you've got 20 activities for your user in your app, and you want to be able to match them with the most appropriate activity based on something that they've written in an input. You don't need to build a whole RAG database out of that. One way that you could go about it, and I did assist the Bubble coaching client with this a few weeks ago, is that you can effectively submit all of this to like OpenAI or to Claude. In fact, we were using Claude because it was JSON structure, and we were basically saying, here's the user's query, here's the different options, here's an ID for each option, just respond with the relevant ID, and that way we can match it back in with the Bubble database. But I think that Rerank is a good enough and in fact maybe even simpler tool in order to do that, and I'm going to be showing you in this tutorial video how to add in Cohere Rerank, where you can sort and it's not just sorting like alphabetically. This is sorting by meaning. This is the clever thing behind how all the AI works and how vectorizing embeddings, just what that process is. I'll be showing you that in this video. Before I go any further though, if you are watching this and you're building an app with Bubble and you really want to accelerate that process, then you must click the link down in our description, because we've got an amazing member community, a mixture of courses with all of our tutorials, and you can use AI to ask a question. We've had amazing feedback. This is better than YouTube, this is better than ChatGPT for finding answers to your Bubble.io and no-code SaaS development questions. But let's launch into this particular one. So I've created an account with Cohere. I've not even put any payment details in. I'm going to discover as I go whether that's required or not, but I think we get enough to test. And so I need to be taking this and translating it into the Bubble API connector. So first thing I'm going to do, and this is really, once you get your head around this, it opens up so many doors to adding in external integrations into your Bubble app, expanding it, whether that's AI or web scraping or just transcription, everything, is to get your head around how to use CURL or curl, and we need to take this and put it into our Bubble app. So I'm going to start by copying the endpoint here and noticing that the request is post. And let's go into the Bubble app. This is just a demo app that I've built. Well, I've recorded hundreds of videos. In fact, you can see everything: email sending, audio, everything you can imagine we've covered in our videos. And I'm going to call this Cohere. If you don't see the Bubble API connector, you just add it in through plugins. And I'll be saying here, Rerank docs. Now, how do we authenticate it? Authentication is important because it is how they bill us. And you want to treat your API key like you treat a password. Otherwise, other people can be billing your account, costing you money. So the way we authenticate is we have in the header of our call authorization. That's our key, and then our value is bearer, and then our API key. So let's go back into Bubble, and I say private key in header. Most services are authorization, that's why that's the default there. And then we write in bearer, and we put in the API key. And put in the API key. There we go. Right, now we know it is a post request, and there's the post endpoint. I'm going to be demoing this in the API connector, but if you were going to be making this dynamic and putting it in a workflow, like a user clicks a button or something happens and you re-rank some documents, you would want that to be an action so that it's a node in a workflow. Right, and then let's have a look at the other essential parts. So it says content type application JSON. I believe that is default now. I'm not sure whether accept application JSON is default with bubble. So I'm going to leave it. And if I get an error, I get an error. But I'm just going to copy all of this for now. Copying everything. Oh, that's annoying. So I don't want that final quote, but it's not letting me select it. So I'm going to paste it in and remove that final quote. Now, if all things work, that should actually be enough to test it. So I'm going to click initialize call. And brilliant. I get back my results, which is that so this is using an index, and in software development terms, indexes start at 0. So it's saying that actually the third item I sent off is the closest in relevancy, and then it's sending back the last 3 in order. So then the first item and the fourth. So that's telling me that the third bit of text, so what is the capital of the United States? It is, of course, this one that's being sent back. Now, if I wanted to make this dynamic, we have to understand a little bit of JSON. So first of all, this bit's easy, which is it's just a text string. So I would just replace this with query. And it's not private. What is private is our API key. We don't want that to ever be accessible to our users in a bubble app. But what our users query isn't private. It may be private that you don't want it to be shared with your other bubble app users. That's only relevant if you're saving data to the database and you'd use privacy rules to do that. This is basically saying, can the user who is engaging with our app, if they open up their browser dev tools and they were to see the data being exchanged between the server and their browser, can they access the value? And it doesn't matter because they've supplied the value. So I'd have to add the speech marks back in. This is important to a process known as making the text JSON safe, and we've got videos covering all of that. But I can rewrite my query in here. What is the capital of the USA? Okay, and then I've got a list here. So the square brackets represent a list in JSON. And you see I've got a list where each item in the list is wrapped in speech marks, but it has a comma in between. So I'm going to take all of that and I'll say list of docs. Actually, I'm going to take this further than I intended with this video. Let's build this out in a front-end page. Now if I try to rerun it, there's going to be an error because I'm not supplying a value in the right format for here. I wonder if it works with one value. Yes, it does. And so it's telling me that the item in place 0, first place, is the most relevant. Let's add this into a page. I might as well. So we'll say Rerank. Now, this is not a lesson about designing a responsive page in Bubble. This is going to be quick. It's going to be using fixed layout. If you're building a user-facing page, you would be using you would be changing the layout value here to either row or column. That way, it's responsive. But so this is nice and quick. We'll take an input here, and we'll call this one user query, and then we'll take another input. And this is going to be our list of answers. Well, it's not really answers. It's more it's not answering a question. It is finding the data that is most similar. And again, you're going to have to really do some experimentation to find out if that's the right thing for the particular thing that you're trying to do in your app. So I'll say here, I'll just call it docs because that's what Rerank by Cohere they call them. And so I'll write in some answers here. In fact, I'm going to take them from the documentation. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste it into initial content. That way I don't have to re-enter each time. But I'm going to make this a little bit more like how a user would enter it. So that's basically where everything is on a new line. Now, if you were retrieving items from the database, I'm going to point you in the right direction for how to do that. Notice that I'm removing the speech marks and I'm removing the commas. Okay, so I've got an answer on each line. I now need some way of storing the, or at least displaying the results. So the way I'll approach that is I'll just put some text, a text label. and I'm going to use a custom state. Now, a custom state is like a temporary variable on the page. If the page is refreshed, it's lost. It's not actually being saved to the database. You can add in a custom state just like this onto any element on the page. I like to put them on the page itself, otherwise I forget where I've put them. So I'll say top doc, because I'll just save the first one, and this is going to actually be a number. And then I print it by saying, what's my page? My page is called Rerank. And there's the custom state. So that's going to print the number that gets returned. Now we just need a button. Now I'll say, what is the top doc? And I'll put the query in here again as initial content, so it makes this demo nice and quick. Capital of USA. And then let's go ahead and preview it. But before I preview it, I actually need to add a workflow in. I've not done that. So when the button is clicked, we want to run the action that we've set up in the Bubble API connector. And now I'm going to see loads of options here because I've built loads of demos with this. So I'm just going to search for Rerank, and I see it written out there. You might see it differently. It really depends on how you've labeled this bit here and this bit here. And make sure you make it action. If you make it data, you won't see it as a node, a step that you can put into your workflow. So now we take our query, which is our query input, and then I JSON safe. I take the value and I JSON safe it. JSON safe is adding back in the speech marks, and it's also ensuring that any punctuation that could be misinterpreted as code is clarified. It's known as escaping, is shown to be part of the text. For example, speech marks would make things confusing. They need to be shown as text rather than code. Now we need a list of documents. So let's just go back to how the list is presented here. We have a list of items that in Bubble terms are made JSON safe, because remember, there could be punctuation in the text string here that could be causing an issue, and they're all separated by a comma, and they go in between the square brackets. Let's go back to the API connector and notice that we are inserting straight into the square bracket. So we have to insert in the speech marks and we have to insert in the commas, otherwise we're going to get a JSON syntax error. So you could fetch items from the database. In fact, I'll demonstrate that first. So I've got some books here, and let's say I want to list through all the titles. So I do a search for books, and then I'd say format as text, and I would then insert something, not the button, the book. Let's say the book's title, and I would JSON save that. And this is a template for each item in the list. And so then I would just put in a comma, and so now I'm getting the title wrapped in speech marks, punctuation made safe, separated by commas, being listed in the right place in the API call. But what I want to do is use my multi-line input, and so I say it's the multi-line inputs value. Now that is just one block of text. I know that I actually need to split it because I want to take each item that is on a different line. Actually, I have 2 line spaces, so I'm going to say split by a single line space, or I could do double, but I'll just do a single. And then I'll say trimmed. That's going to remove any additional line spaces, and then I'm going to say JSON safe. And I think by default, it's going to add in a comma. If it doesn't, we'll get an error, and I'll debug that. So let's go to our demo, refresh it. So we should get back the index value of 0. So the index value 0, 1, 2. We should see a 2 printed down below, at least if I saved the response. I'm getting sloppy here. So we set a state, Rerank, top doc, and I'm now needing to retrieve data from the response here. So I want to go into results, and I'm going to go for the first results index. So results are step 1, results, first items, index. Now that should print that 2 value because it's the index position 2, meaning it's the 3rd item. I'm getting back a 4. Now maybe that is because it has recognized capital and capital here. So remember, that's not the actual initial query. And this is just showing off how things can really vary and how it's really just worth testing everything. We're still getting back 4. Okay, I'm going to double check that I've not broken something here, which is that we will go step by step and just see exactly what's happening. So we are sending, okay, right. The trimmed has not worked. We're getting back 4 because it's sending off these empty strings, and that's messing with the index position. So I was mistaken. Split by should be, if I go all the way back, backspace 1, 2. Okay, and just for recap, that's because in order to get from here down to there, it is 2 presses of the enter key. There we go. I'm getting back the right answer. So, quick lesson on how to debug, API calls with Bubble, and a quick look at how to use Rerank. I will just point out that you can do a lot of amazing things with Rerank. They have their own chat. They've got their own classification, data sets, tokenizations, embeddings. A lot of what you can do with OpenAI, it's really worth comparing. OpenAI obviously gets all the press coverage. A lot of the attention is on OpenAI. Cohere is by no means a small business. They're international. They've got teams around the world. And it is worth checking out the innovative products being released by companies that are trying to carve out their own share of the market in competition with OpenAI.